Hello, hello. Welcome to another All Hands on Deck. I'm Katherine McBean, and today I'm going to be sharing a bit of a longer podcast with you guys. There's some stuff I want to talk about, and it's suddenly become really, really important actually to do it now, in light of the fact that we had two-tier Keir Starmer last night making his little announcement, which we all know boils down to the fact that they're going to bring in more stringent restrictions on us. They're talking about this extra level of policing that they're going to be accessing and using against us far-righters, us mums who are concerned about the future of our children and have genuine concerns that aren't being listened to. And this is going to be one of the biggest issues. People don't have a voice. What they're going to do? And we haven't had a voice, us far righters, for a number of years, particularly the last 4 years. And as a result of that, a boiling pot of frustration and anger is about to boil over, and it's not going to look pretty. So we can either go about this the right way or we can go about this the wrong way. And I'm going to go into more detail today into what I think is the right way to do this and how we can make this happen quite swiftly and very effectively with limited impact. There's no need for aggression and violence, certainly not from our side of things, and certainly no need for things to be smashed up and destroyed as a result. And also keeping our eye on the prize. Who are the real problems here? Who are the ones that have caused this to happen? And who actually has to take accountability and can take action to eradicate the issues that we're currently facing? So, going to go back a little bit because there's a lot of new people coming through now. Excuse me if I call you newbies, but it's also a bit of an introduction to newbies as well, because the rate at which people are waking up and becoming aware of the situation is growing exponentially. So, just to go back a little bit, I think we're all realizing now that the brainwashing has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. We've been led down a dark path, and where we need to take some responsibility, certainly the generation before us, I would suggest, is the fact that this has been going on for quite a long time, and we could have been more aware and put our foot down before this. We do have, I think, as citizens of this country, a moral and ethical responsibility to ensure we're doing all we can to do the best for our country overall. And we handed our power over. We gave it to the bad guys. I mean, they came in and took it by stealth, don't get me wrong, but it is within us, and I think we all know this now. It's absolutely within us to be able to put our foot down and say, no, actually, I don't agree with that, and no, that's not okay, and no, you're not going to get to do that. And we didn't. They kind of waved the diamondy, flashy Barbie dolls and whatever in front of us, with new technology, more convenient ways of living, fast food, phone, all these things were coming up. The pop culture was shifting. I mean, it was all being controlled. We all know that now. And we look at the media, they've played a part, but we have to, in order to ensure this doesn't happen again, we do have to accept and take responsibility for the fact that whether it be our generation or previous generations really did have opportunities to stop this from happening, and we didn't. We took our eye off the ball. And that's just the first thing I want to say, because what we're about to go through has to be that historical moment where the line in the sand is drawn and we ensure that this doesn't happen again. History has a very interesting way of repeating itself. We've seen that now. We know what that looks like. So we need to ensure that we learn the lessons of old. We understand, whether it be us, the people before us, what happened. In order for this to happen, this centralized, powerful control mechanism that we see in place across the globe, and as a result of that, where we're at now with the incoming control mechanisms and this centralized power base that wants to see us just as drones, just as workers at best, and control every element of our lives. So it was a slow centralization process, which really kicked into moving in the 70s and 80s, and we've seen it just moving in that direction now. 9/11 sadly was used as an opportunity to inflict further control mechanisms and security mechanisms on we the people, and they've obviously played the game in terms of the action they've taken in the Middle East, which has obviously caused destabilization and much resentment and much upset, of course, understandably so. And I had someone comment the other day after I'd made a comment like this, and they said, well, it wasn't our fault. Well, look what's happening now across the world. And we're fine, our tax money financing that. How much are we really trying to stop our government doing it? I mean, really, how many steps have we taken? We didn't understand our power, and we're just learning to understand our power now. But it's how we utilize that power and put it into practice in the best way, rather than anarchy and chaos spilling out on the streets, which will bring further violence, bring further aggression. I do understand the frustration people have. Believe you me, I've been awake for over 25 years. I get it. I get it. And the amount of self-control I've had to learn and ways of balancing it in my own mind has taken quite some work. So don't for a minute think I don't understand the frustration and the anger. I absolutely do. But I do think this is an opportunity for them to try and really put some control mechanisms in place. And I suggest we eradicate the opportunity for them to do that with immediate effect. So this has built up more recently, obviously, with the onslaught of illegal immigrants coming into the country, the realization that, you know, a massive percent, I think it's late 80s in terms of percent of these illegal immigrants are men, and they're more than often quite young men, if you like, fighting age men. And it's not only the massive financial cost to taxpayers that is an issue, it's also the fact that the governments have shown where their priorities lie in terms of housing these immigrants and funding these immigrants, the access they have to healthcare for those that came a few years back and had families, the access to the education system and so forth. I don't ever begrudge anyone on this planet, good people, access to healthcare or education, but we do not have the infrastructure to support this, and we do not have the economic stability, let alone the practicals of space to support this influx. And they are now being funded by us whilst British citizens struggle, particularly the more vulnerable, particularly the elderly, particularly those maybe single parents and so forth, who are barely able to keep up with energy costs, particularly in autumn winter. And let's face it, our autumn winters are getting a lot longer at the moment. Wonder why that is. As well as the practical side of it in terms of not being able to fund our healthcare sufficiently, or certainly not having it funded effectively, should I suggest, as well as I know I've spoken to a number of schools and teachers, and the funding that they're receiving is just not good enough. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got massive issues with our education system, massive issues. But the one that we have currently got, there are some very good teachers out there. There are some not so great ones, granted, but there's some very good teachers out there who genuinely do care, and they are struggling to keep things going, absolutely struggling. And this is not okay. Whilst we have the indoctrination through the education system, which is one of the reasons we're in the position we are now, is because all of us have been indoctrinated or attempted indoctrination at some point or another. We're now at the stage where we understand that that is how the education system works, and so much that we've been taught of history or other practical topics is fallacy. It's not real. It's not true. We don't support an education system that supports those children who aren't those to sit down and have an academic education. Whilst I do believe that every child should be given at least a basic academic education, I do believe that there is so much more we can do to work with people as who they are, draw the best out of them, generate fantastic skills for those people to put back into the welfare of our country. So there's lots and lots of issues on that front. We've watched the third wave feminism come along and pretty much destroy the nuclear family, while supported by the mainstream, while supported by the government in that. Feminism is, as far as I'm concerned, certainly third wave onwards, feminism has been nothing but destructive to society, and that was very much supported by the bad guys that as we know them now. That hasn't changed at all. The Christian faith has been well and truly not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. I don't consider myself a Christian. I love Christ, and I have my own way forward, but I very much support the fact that this is a Christian nation, and as such, it should be predominantly seen as a Christian nation, and that should be supported. And we've seen the knock on those that have a faith or follow a religion in this country, particularly Christianity, by the mainstream, by the pop culture in recent decades. And I think that's had a very detrimental effect to us and to identifying our own culture, which is one of the things that is currently under attack by illegal immigrants, but also to some degree the amount of immigrants we've allowed in and not expected stronger moves towards assimilating in with our culture, which is what is here. In fact, all we've done is furnish for their culture. I'm a people pleaser. I want everyone to be happy, but at the same time, it's been so detrimental to our country's culture and the eradication of what it is to be English or Scottish or Welsh or Irish, whatever that might be. It's not easily identifiable anymore in the mainstream, and as a result of that, people lose their identity. That's why it's so easy for them to come in with this gender identity politics. People have lost their identity of who they are and what it means to be them, and actually it shows that there's something very valuable in that, and that goes back through our history. It goes back to previous generations and our ancestors, and there can be some pride that you can take from that as to what that means. Don't get me wrong, I've got big issues with some of our history, but it's still our history and there's still lessons to be learned from it, whichever way you look at it. So we've seen that being attacked as well. And then we've had the Mockingbird media manipulating people for donkey's years. We now see the police coming in and becoming foot soldiers for the government. I can't see it as any other way at the moment. There doesn't seem to be another route I can suggest the police are taking. The judicial system, well, we've certainly seen in the last 4 years in terms of trying to get COVID cases through the courts, how they are entirely corrupt. I was speaking to a friend. I've been speaking to him on and off over the last 4 years. I'm not going to say any names, but he used to work in the legal profession, and he was having dinner with a judge back in 2017. And this judge was somebody who'd become a friend over the years, I believe, and he says a very, very good judge. But they're having dinner, and this judge friend suddenly turned around to my friend and said, I'm going to be retiring. Now, this guy, I think I was right in saying he's 59, which for a judge we know is no age. And my friend was very shocked because he knew how much this judge had enjoyed doing the work. And my friend pushed him and said, well, why? Are you sure? This doesn't sound right. I know you love it. And he said, let's just put it this way. I've been told about stuff that's coming down the line. And he said, I do not want to play any part in it. I would rather resign and step down. And that's what he chose to do. And it does make you wonder how many of these judges had a heads up as to what was incoming and actually made a conscious decision to either stay in the game or to pull out. I don't know the answer to that. That would be very interesting. But we do know the judiciary in this country is not allowing us to seek justice for genocide, for crimes against humanity and horrific things that have taken place. You cannot even get into the court system, barely at all. The regulators, the regulatory bodies across the UK have become nothing but corrupt, and this has become very visible in the last 4 years, particularly those that have been involved with the COVID side of things, like the GMC, the SRA, MHRA, obviously. These guys are abominably corrupt, absolutely corrupt to the core, and that needs to be recognized, and it's not recognized at all. And we know, with the Met Police, I mean, I went back to 2014, I think it was. I went maybe slightly after that. I went on one of the old Million Mast March. I can't remember what it's called back in the day. And I went up to central London with the objective to go and speak to the Metropolitan Police officers on the ground and find out where they were at, because I could see where this was going. And I spoke to a few of them, and they were all very nice. But they admitted then that they were being trained at that point for some incoming down the line uprisings. And they were quite open about it. And I asked them, how do you feel about that, about turning against your own people? And they said, well, we do have issue with it. That, I personally, this is what the guy said. He said, I personally have a problem with it. I said, well, why do you stay doing the job you do? He said, because we do get to take down the bad guys. We do get to catch big drug dealers. We do get to get hold of those that have been abusing children. We do get to do these things that really means something important. And it's trying to find that balance. And then I said to them, there's probably going to come a time later down the line when you are going to be asked to turn against your own people, and you're going to have some really difficult decisions to make. And having an interaction with the police in the last few years, I've said the same to them. And they know what's coming down the line. And I think some of them are really great, and I think some of them are not so great. And it is down to that individual police officer to decide, are you going to turn against the people that you swore an oath to protect, or are you going to do what is morally, ethically, and professionally the right thing to do? And at the moment, it's not looking too good for the ones that I've seen. But I think we all need to take a bit more of a sensible approach. There's a lot of tarring with the same brush, and we have to understand people are individuals. And I do know that there's people in the NHS who absolutely know what's going on, but they don't want to leave the patients. They don't want to leave them in the hands of worse things happening. So you've always got to look at balance, guys. We've always got to consider that. Not easy, I grant you, because it's a very passionate time. It's a very volatile time. And I completely understand that temperatures are rising, but I do think it's a time for cool heads and level thinking. So we know that we've got all this going on, the climate change crap, net zero crap, the CBDCs, the ULEZ situation. We've clearly got the wrong people in the positions of power. We know that. We know we're surrounded by the mockingbird media. We know loads of people are swallowed up still within the brainwashing that's been taking place for decades now. Worth remembering, we were probably all there at some point, but luckily there's enough of us awake now to draw a line, to stop the incoming from coming, to do it in a way that is not massively volatile, certainly not destructive, certainly not violent and aggressive. Because once we do that, we start feeding into their hands. Look at the opportunity two-tier Keir has now just taken in terms of greater surveillance and new police powers or whatever crap he's going on about. We've seen you, Keir. We know your game. We know who you really work for. And thank you very much. Do carry on, because what you're doing is you're waking up the masses, which is just more of us to make sure that you come to a grinding halt very soon. So, what's my suggestion? Let me take a sip of my drink. We don't want to respond with violence and aggression. And I think 99% of this people in this country ideally really don't want to go down that road. We all know where it goes. We know it's not the smart man's move, effectively. It is a knee-jerk response to the wankers that are just winding us up. They're just winding us up. They've had 4 years of slowly winding us up. Now they would just want to start doing it a little bit quicker. And we can either respond to that with the like, i.e., with aggression and violence and threatening language and so forth, or we can just have a very sensible, united move. And I pick that one. So what you do, and we absolutely communicate this openly. And do you know why we communicate it openly? Because there's more than of us than them. They cannot shut us down if we're all having the same conversation. They cannot do anything with that. Now, to my knowledge, if we are aware that these people have been committing crimes, we are well within our rights to stop them committing crimes. And we can go as back as far as we want. I mean, we know we're not told the truth about 9/11. We know we weren't told the truth about Iraq or Afghanistan. But as a result, nobody faced any real justice. Nobody did. Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair are out there walking freely. Tony Blair, the devil's whore, as I call him, because it would not surprise me remotely if that's exactly what he was. He's been caught cottaging in toilets. You've got Alistair Campbell, who I don't like to suggest that he was doing anything, but I would also suggest that he was a pretty bad monster. You've got Peter Mandelson still walking around. Hello, Epstein. We've got all of these players that go back in the last couple of decades that have absolutely, their actions have caused a lot of what we're seeing happen now. Certainly in terms of the migrants and so forth. And there was no justice then. Well, we're going to have justice now. We know justice is going to come, but we want to make it as smooth as possible. So what we need to do is identify the bad players in all of this. And I'm just going to run through a list of what I think in terms of responsibility that looks like. So House of Commons, House of Lords, all the mainstream media headquarters, all the regional mainstream television stations, all county council offices, some city council offices, the biolabs that we know we've got across the UK, the banking headquarters, City of London, the supermarket headquarters, I'm talking the main players, all the police chiefs across every constabulary across the UK, all of the heads at the Metropolitan Police, all the main regulators across the UK, including specifically the ones involved with COVID, or the energy companies, or the media. Sorry, don't let me forget Ofcom. I suppose I'd include that in the COVID side of things as well. All vaccination centres, the main Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca sites for the UK. And you can go so far as to look at some other areas. So you could specifically say MP offices, for example. And what I suggest we do is we pick a date. And on that date, we block the doors and we guard the gates. And we do not let them in. We let them out if there's people working night shifts or whatever timing it is. You let people out. You let them get home. You let them go to their families. That's not what I'm suggesting. But you block the facilities. You completely shut them down. You do not let them function. And the reason that you do this is because it's non-violent, non-aggressive. You're not damaging any property, any land, anything. But you're stopping them from having the ability to function as they wish to function. Now, this is obviously not foolproof in the sense that they could go around it and use online options. They've probably got backup systems. You know, there's are ways that they can still function, but it sends a massive message. And the reason it sends a massive message is to each location that we identify, you send thousands of us. Thousands. You take all those numbers that are planning to protest across this weekend, and you get them actually physically doing something that will have an impact, that will make a difference. I'm not knocking the protests, to each their own, but you only achieve so much through protest. What we actually need to do is utilize these people, including myself, including all of us who care, in a non-violent but very effective way of getting their attention. And doing it in a way where they can't send in the water cannons, they can't send in the pitchfork police, they can't do any of that stuff because we're not doing anything wrong and we have the law on our side. And that's worth remembering. We have the law on our side. And what we're trying to achieve out of that, well, you go in with a list of demands. And what you let them know is, we will not be, we're just going to rotate, guys. We're just going to keep rotating people. We'll just set up our little tents here. We'll get ourselves nice and comfy, have some barbecues going on. We are not going to move until the following demands are met. Now, what those demands look like has to be decided by we the people. But I've put down 10 demands that I personally would consider, because I think that they're going to have the impact, but they're also going to bring the justice that we need. And they're also going to create a route forward. So number one, so the public acceptance, and I mean that by the mainstream media, the government publicly accepting and supporting and funding an independent inquiry into COVID-19 and the jabs by publicly selected representatives. So not who the government identify we should select to do the investigating, not people they can pay off in the back brown envelope down the back pocket type scenario. We, the people, select those. And I know there are so many amazing doctors and scientists and solicitors and others who've been involved with this, who haven't been able to have their voice heard, who are absolutely qualified to conduct such an investigation and do it fairly and without bias. That's the key part. They might show bias, they might manipulate everything. We're not going to do that. We're going to be the adults in the room. For God's sakes, let's just be the adults in the room, because we are missing adults in the room in this country right now. And I mean that by those that are going out there and they're like, aggression. Hang on a minute. Let's just calm down. Very easy to allow our emotions to run away and control us. And, you know, in the art of war, that's probably not the way to go. And I'd recommend that we stop and consider this as an alternative route or something similar. I mean, I'm open to ideas. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all solution to this, but this is what I would suggest we do. Number two, immediate withdrawal for the UK from the ECHR, so we can remigrate all of the illegal immigrants with immediate effect. Get them gone. Get them gone. They're costing us millions every day. I mean, most people don't understand how much is this costing the British taxpayers financially, let alone the fear factor. You know, when these guys are in the community, their culture doesn't align with our culture. And so they live by their cultural rules. And as a result of that, it's actually making people fearful in their own communities. People are scared. We don't, sometimes we fear what we don't understand, and maybe, you know, an increased communication would be beneficial, but actually in the long term it's still not practical. We still don't have the money, we still don't have the infrastructure, we still don't have the space. Irrelevant. So these guys have to go, and they have to go with immediate effect. Aside from the fact, the clues in the name, illegal immigrants, they've committed a crime. They do not deserve to be here, and they certainly do not deserve to be paid, have everything paid for them. So they need to go. Number three, immediately announce a 3-month alert to all non-natives in the UK that their benefits are stopping. They are no longer able to access the benefit/credit system within the UK. They've got a 3-month window to decide. You can get a job and you can stay and you can work hard and pay your taxes, or I'm afraid you go back to your native country. And again, I'm not doing this to be unkind. I'm not a racist. I'm not picking on a particular ethnicity or color or anything like the religion, anything like that at all. What I'm suggesting is, if you're here living off the benefit system and you're non-native, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. Not when there is native British people who don't have housing, or certainly adequate housing, who can barely pay for food or fuel or energy. No, absolutely not. And don't get me wrong, I've got a problem with the UK benefit system, and I get benefits. I'm a single parent, you know, but with the UK benefit system as it is in terms of native people, that's a whole nother conversation. But there are far too many people, and I know it because I've seen it personally, far too many people who play the system. You know, come on, guys, let's have a little bit of a better work ethic. Let's get out there and do what we can. And some of us are poorly and that we're not well enough to work full time. That's fine. Let's work with that. But you don't get to just, and I'm not saying everyone by any imagination, but some people do play the system, and that needs to be knocked on the head, because it's not fair on everybody else who pays their taxes. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's all bullshit. The whole system is bullshit. But whilst this is in place, until we can transition out of it, let's just be a bit more sensible about things. Number four, an immediate commitment to eradicate crime across the UK with the temporary employment of ex-service military personnel being hired and trained in a police style role, whilst we eradicate the magnitude of crime that is currently taking place across this country. Everyone knows, say, for example, your car gets nicked, or is an attempted burglary, or someone steals your lawnmower or something like that. It's a crime being committed, but your chances of seeing a copper or getting anything more than potentially a crime number is this big. Remember when we had bobbies on the beat, particularly, you know, just small local communities, for example. Everyone kind of knew everyone else. They knew the police officer. They could then see if things were out of whack, if there was something wrong, if Beryl at number 90 is going, you know, behaving a bit funny. You know, you can find out these things, and a police officer can actually be a huge benefit to the community, but all they've become is foot soldiers and for the government. And as a result of that, they no longer investigate normal crime. It just doesn't happen anymore. We need to ensure that we bring on enough personnel to eradicate crime. I'm not even talking about the knife crime. That's a whole other thing. Think of the violent crimes that are taking place across the UK, the violence in the cities. And so often the police just don't get involved with it. And I'm not necessarily saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but they don't. And so what's the answer? You've got options. You've got vigilantism, which is where we're heading. And nobody really wants to have to resort to that. Or you beef up the police force that you've got at the moment, work within the law, police, do your effing job and abide by your oaths, but pull on board paid personnel who are ex-military or similar, who have sound mind and physical body, who can be trained up very, very quickly. And I even know people who could do this, train them up very, very quickly and apply them into the force as part of the gang, so that they can go out and we can eradicate the crime. Let's knock it on its head. Let's knock it on its head. And once those people are banged up, what happened to all those prisons that were built tail end of the last decade, or into 2020, I think, as well? A number of big prisons in the UK. Let's make use of those, shall we? Let's make use of those. Let's eradicate the crime. Once again, I don't think our judicial system's right, but we have to go through a process. There's got to be a transition. And right now we need to deal with the immediate issues that are causing disruption across the UK. And then we can start this transition process. Number 5, I think we're on. A new general election to be announced with a 6-month lead date very, very quickly. We need to also, as we're doing this, change our voting system to one that's far fairer than what we've got. This first past the post nonsense has to stop. It has to be knocked on the head. We need proportional representation. And again, I don't believe in a huge central government. I don't believe in the system overall as we've got it, but we've got a transition. And right now, we need to have a general election, but with a good 6-month lead time so that people like me, regular people, can become candidates and represent their constituency across the country. You have to be passionate. You have to actually give a shit. You're not in this for the money. You're not in this for your own ideology. You're in this to represent the people and to fix this fucking country. And quite honestly, there are people like me who would do it for half the money that MPs are currently getting paid, quite honestly, and would do it because we're passionate. But we need time to campaign. We need time to get things together. We need time to help open people's eyes to the reality of the situation so we can get the right people into government, not these career politicians who don't give two shits and are bought out by somebody other, be it Friends of Israel, be it, hello CFR, Mr. Two-Tier Care, the number of non-elected, undemocratic organisations that are out there that really do have control over the groups that should be in control across the UK, are elected officials, as well as a clear out of the civil service. That's a whole other topic, but I'll get to that another day. Number 6, an immediate end to foreign aid. Boom, cut it, doom, cut off the lifeline, sever the cord. That doesn't mean I don't give a shit about people in other countries. Far from it, far from it. But at the moment, we are heading towards our own little version of a third world nation. We need to be investing back into our country, into the people of this country. And that doesn't mean, again, that I want to see people suffer in another country. Far from it, far from it. And anyone who knows me well knows how I feel about humanity. But we, being practical, we cannot afford to do this. We cannot afford to do this while our infrastructure is just crumbling around our ears. And we've got children not receiving the education. We've got children receiving a nutritious diet because their parents either don't know how to deal with that, hello education, or cannot afford to do that. And that is an issue that we all should be focusing on. We need to end foreign aid. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. That line needs to be drawn immediately. Common sense, not ideology, common sense. We're not in a position for ideology right now. That'll come, but we're not there right now. We need common sense solutions. And that's what I'm about. I'm not interested in the other fucking stuff. Let's have common sense solutions. Let's implement them. What we really need as well is we need to connect, we need to communicate, we need to collaborate, we need to coordinate, we the people, and we need to have open conversation about that. I don't give a fuck if the media are listening. I don't give a fuck if the government are listening. I don't care. There are more of us than them, and we're not doing anything outside of the law. We are not doing anything outside of the law, and you can look at that as natural law if you want, and I'm all good with that. Number 7, we need an independent and recognised investigation into all regulators, but specifically those involved in COVID-19 and the energy industry. I feel very strongly about this. We've watched the SRA, the GMC, the MHRA absolutely destroy people's careers, refuse to do their job properly, refuse to hold their own dodgy staff, to account. The regulators have increased their powers in recent years. I mean, look at what Ofcom have been playing at. Ofgen. Look at what these organizations who are supposed to, be the watchdog of their industry, and all they've done is eradicate the piss, absolutely take the piss out of us. And they've not done their jobs. They have controls that they should not have. They're unelected bureaucrats. We need a full investigation into that, and I want it funded by government. I know that's our money, but the sooner we get money off them, the sooner we make this happen. Number 8. Start the decentralization of central government and return power back to the people. So one of the biggest issues we had is governments have slowly, from local governments, have been handing over their power, or central government have been taking it. Neither have been doing a particularly great job of that for the people. And as a result of that, at a local level, we have far less power than we used to have. And so our voices can't be heard as easily. It's far easier to go to a local council meeting to access that, to access the decision makers, and to pitch your concern or share your ideas at that level than it is with central government. I mean, trying to even get an appointment with your MP. Sarah Dyke, you are my MP. I've been asking for over 6 months to meet with you. You have yet to meet your obligations to meet with me as your constituent. It's not okay. And I can imagine there's many people across the UK who've had the same problem. But being able to access and influence central government is far, far harder. So they, by stealth, have been taking the powers away, taking the powers away, taking the powers away. And watch what they've done. They've centralised the NHS, which is now just spilling money out of its arsehole everywhere, rather than actually allowing matron and, senior doctors in the hospital to work with a team to decide what that hospital needs and where they buy it from and what that looks like and who they hire. That's been taken away, and I don't think it's been of any benefit whatsoever to any of us. It's the same with the education department. Everything's been massively centralized. It's still being centralized now. I'm watching it happen with my kids and my own kids' school. That needs to come back to a local level, very much a local level. We need the government to start decentralisation and working with local and district and city and town and county councils to ensure that the power returns to the people. And I mean that quite passionately, because all of this changes the minute we start decentralisation, because then the onus is on us. It's not on central government. We've got to understand we've allowed them to become a nanny state. We are more than effing capable of looking after ourselves and making very sensible decisions to support ourselves and others in our community, particularly those that are vulnerable, and native UK citizens. And again, I don't mean that nastily, but to me, they're the priority. And we get to everyone else when we're shipshape and in crystal fashion and all good, booming, healing, everything's fantastic. Then we can look at how we can help others. But right now we need to help ourselves. Number 9, a full independent audit of all county councils with accountability. So I've recently stopped paying my council tax, and I think I need to go to court next month, which I'm not going to do. I'm not going to even acknowledge it, because I went through their accounts from the previous year, and so much of my council tax money was being spent on paying council's debt or interest on the debt, and supporting, a big chunk of it was supporting non-natives settling into this area. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not okay with either of those. I'm not. I want my money to go on infrastructure, on schools, on leisure centres, on health, on transport, on roads, on all elements of infrastructure that will actually help the people across my county, across my area, my constituency. And that's not happening. We need accountability. We need full auditing of these county councils. We need to understand where the money's going, how it got there, how we can actually change this, and who is to be held to account. And whilst I'm not one overall for appraisals or so much of that kind of approach, I do understand the need to set an example for the future so others don't even try to pull the same problems out of the bag, and we, the people, end up having to deal with the situation. No, it's not okay. We need full audits. We need to know where it's gone wrong. We need to know where the money's gone. If anyone has done anything illegal, backhand, or immoral, they need to be held to account in a just judicial system, which we currently don't have. Number 10, the final one, and probably for me, one of the absolute, if not the biggest one, it is the biggest one for me personally, a massive independent investigation into child trafficking in the UK. It's a massive historic problem. It's only got worse over the years. It's disgusting when you consider the organizations who have personnel who are very aware of this, but those that have actually supported it. Now, whilst that is a minority number, it's still happening. And I'm talking about the police, I'm talking about social services, I'm talking about the education system. There are some really warped and fucked up people involved in that. Again, minority. And I want to make that clear. It's a minority. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And also what bothers me is the fact that so many people know about it and they keep their mouth shut. I'm sorry, where's your spine? Where's your integrity? Where's your heart? you know, if these people need to be held to account, and they need to be held to the most serious account possible. We cannot even allow a centimetre of space for any of this to ever happen again. We need a massive independent review to that. I want to know who in the political system, the police system, the judicial system, and I want to know who was involved with that, who knew about that. I want to know if you were on the sidelines and just looking over the fence listening, and you found out about it and you kept your mouth shut. This is not a time for weakness. This is not a time for a lack of courage. It's actually a time for bravery. And unfortunately, those who kept their mouth shut, in light of what they've learned about child trafficking and child abuse in general, you need to be held to the highest account. I'm sorry, there is no justification or excuse as far as I'm concerned. So those would be the 10 demands that I would make as you're shutting down all the bad players. I haven't given a full list of who we shut down as well. You know, I've gone through some that I can think of that would certainly have an impact, but there's actually probably a bit more than that. But in order to do this successfully, everyone has to be on the same page who's involved. So you don't suddenly have people turning up at, I don't know, mosques, for example, and smashing the shit out of them on the same day. You do not have people who will be prepared to break the law very easily, unless in self-defense, very easily in order to take part in this. We do not want people who are silly and childish and abusive and violent and aggressive. It literally waters down the message. It waters down the action. This could be the biggest civil action that any of us ever make in our lives, in decades, that will grind everything to a halt enough that they have to listen, or they don't get their toys back. And if they do get their toys back, if we allow them to have their toys back, then they have to abide by the law and remember who they're supposed to be in their positions. And we need this transitionary government to come in, because quite honestly, we cannot carry on as we are. We are escalating financially into the depths of hell, and we need people to come on board and get a grip of that. So we need to have real democratic process in this country. We don't have that. Do we need to set up our own judiciary? No, we certainly need an investigation into the current judiciary, but it all needs to be done independently. But in order to be able to achieve anything, we need to grind them to a halt. And the best way to grind them to a halt is numbers. And you get those numbers in place, you stop them functioning. You stop them getting anywhere. You stop them from being able to go into work. You stop them from being able to put on the mainstream TV. You stop them from being able to lie to people. You stop them, but you don't need to do it aggressively. You draw a line under it, you make your demands, and you set a time limit. If those demands aren't met, we don't move, we don't let you function, we don't do anything. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to strike for a week. And guess what we're going to do? We're not going to pay any council tax this month. And guess what next we're going to do? We're just going to go, and we're going to go, and we're going to go, and we're going to go. And we keep expanding, because we hold the power. They need us far more than we need them. In all honesty, if we could take our tax money out of the situation, we could almost just not need the central government. You know, for anything. But it's so warped and fucked up that we're reliant upon the system still. So we need to get the right people into place to take care of the system, start making it work for we the people, whilst disseminating and decentralizing the entire power structure. So hopefully that gives you guys an overview of kind of how long I've been talking for. It doesn't tell me, but hopefully it gives that you guys an overview of what I think we should be doing next, and what I think is the smart man's move, and not only getting the attention that we're looking for in order to have our voices heard and to get some real answers, but also in how to take back control of the situation in a non-violent, non-aggressive manner, whereby they can't do anything but get aggressive with us. If they choose to do that, self-defense is a real thing. But we cannot raise a fist first. We cannot raise anything first. We cannot become physically aggressive. I don't even see the point in being verbally aggressive, quite honestly, because that's what they want you to do. And then it winds each other up. Think of the energy. Think of the energy field of which you're going to be in. If we do this and we go forward to do this, and you're on an energy field where you're surrounded by anger and frustration, it's very easy for us to feel an influence from that and become angry and frustrated. What we actually need is cool, calm heads. We need the adults in the room. We need the guys who are going to stand there and hold the line and say, no, I'm sorry, mate, you're not coming in. That is the way it is. We're not moving. We do not want any physical altercations. If you come at me to physically harm me, I'm well within my rights to conduct a citizen's arrest, and I will follow through on that. You know, just hold the line very sensibly. Don't become aggressive. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because I'd love to put together a team across the UK who could help communicate and organise this This is not a Tommy Robinson thing. This is not a reform thing. This is a regular person's thing. There's no leadership per se. I don't want there to be any leadership. I don't think we need that. What we need, again, is collaboration, communication, coordination. Those are the things that matter on every level. And I think we all need to come together, all the good people of this country. And I don't give a fuck, you know, what your original or your ethnicity is. If you're a British citizen and you want what is right for Britain, and you work in this country and you give back to this country, and you absolutely love to embrace the culture of this country for what it is, being a Christian nation with a strong history, right or wrong, but a strong history and a strong moral compass, then we should be collaborating and coming together and to ensure that we create a better future for our children. Because let's face it, our generations have let things get fucked up a little bit. But we can change that. We can change the course of history. It doesn't have to be this way. They don't get to play ball with our lives. If you agree with this, I would really love you to share this message absolutely everywhere. I don't need the kudos for it or credit for it. I'm happy to pick it up and run with it. Drop your comments below. If you've got somebody else out there you think would be great for pushing this forward, get them involved. I'm not precious about it like other things that I've done. I'll hand it back to the people, because that is what this is all about. So I'm going to drop my link below as well for a little bit of help with funding, because I do want to keep going at this. And it's really important that I pay some of my bills. I'm not paying all of them, not the ones I don't agree with. But things like rent and stuff, you know, kind of got to pay those ones and buy a bit of food here and there. But I'm more than happy to push this forward. We do not have much time. The clock is up against us. Temperatures are rising. You can see what Two-Tier here and his crew want to do. They're going to be pushing the button quite soon. So I'd suggest that if we do think that something like this is a good solution, that we get the fuck on with it. I don't tend to like to hang around with things anyway, but in all honesty, I think we can all feel that something has to happen. And I think that if we go down the route of violence and aggression, or allowing them to wind us up into violence or aggression, or playing the division game, we're eating into their hands. Let's be fucking smart about this. Let's be smart about this. Let's play this a little bit strategically. Let's have the impact that we want, but we don't have to play into their hands, and we just take back control. Drop your comments below. Let me know what you think. If you think this is a goer, make it very clear, because I'm happy to push forward with this. I think the time has come, and I'm not shy of hard work, and I'm very determined. So, but if you think of somebody else, again, drop it below. Let's get this information out to them. Let's share it with them. Let them do it. I'm not precious about this. For me, it's getting the work done, and it's doing it in the right way is the important part, and taking care of our vulnerable people around us whilst we're at it. You know, some of us are built very strong, and as such we should lean into that. And that strength doesn't necessarily come from physicality or from getting involved with fights and winning that way. It comes from an absolute steadfast grip on where you want to be and where you want to go and what you believe in, and your morals and your ethics and your integrity. That is where the strength needs to come from, and not allowing them to penetrate up here with the fear, with their mockingbird media. You know, draw on your strength, use it right now. Now is the time for this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Let's hope things stay nice and smooth over the weekend, but please do share this if you agree with the message I'm suggesting, because we really could make this happen if we think this is the right way about it. I personally think it is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Drop your message below. God bless, have a great weekend, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.